at this point we're going to move to our final panel and talk and everything of the day. So I'm actually going to be moderating this one. So I think at this point I'm going to introduce my panel to the stage, and I'll let them introduce themselves when they're up here. But some of them you've met already, and then we'll get started. The panel's going to be basically, it's entitled The State of VR, and we're going to be looking at the present and what also the future holds for virtual reality. So we've got a mic, yeah? You've all got a mic? Great. So I'll start with myself, just in case, you know, for people who are new here. My name's Simon Drake. I'm the Developer Relations Manager at Pocket Gamer and at Steel Media. I lead a lot of the virtual reality stuff that we're moving into at the moment, such as the Global VR Challenge. So I've spent a lot of time with virtual reality, and I'll let the guys introduce themselves now.
Hi everybody, I'm Alan Jernigan. I'm the Managing Director at Charm Games. We make VR puzzle games, and I promise that I'm not up here sweating because I'm nervous about the future of VR.
Hi there, my name is Jedrzej from Mythical City Games, and which is a Vancouver-based game studio.
Hi, my name is Mattan Kitchale. I run content strategy for Meta. We're based in Redwood City, Silicon Valley.
My name is Mack. I run Hammer and Tusk. We started out as a VR newsletter. We stumbled into making VR product. It's going really well. Super exciting.
Great. Okay, well, I think to begin we'll start with what is an easy question to say, but the answer might not be as easy. So obviously 2016 has been posed by the entire industry, myself included, as sort of the year of VR. So I suppose to start, we're just wondering, how do you think it's going? You know, how do you think the year of VR is faring at the moment?
Take it away, VR folks.
Well, I think the goal of 2016 was to build up the hype for 2017, 2018. Yeah. That's how I've always taken it from the beginning. And a lot of people have said that there's more to it than that, and it's about shipping units early on, but I don't buy into that. So it's going great. Everybody's really excited, and 2017, 18 are going to be great.
Yeah, I agree that 2016 has been fantastic so far as a start for VR. One of the things that I'm very excited about is the fact that being in this early into the VR development is it's a great time to explore and experiment, and getting a chance to do that is really exciting. I feel like that opportunity doesn't come around very often, so it's great that we have this set of content creators out there experimenting, creating stuff, testing things out, seeing what works and what doesn't, so that for the next few years we'll be able to develop some sort of standards and really help push the industry forward.
I think it's been a great year for VR. I mean, I'm a VR enthusiast. I mean, we have a Vive, we have an Oculus in-house, we play with it a lot. I'm very bullish about the Vive. This is our main tool these days in the office that we kind of constantly use and test for different kinds of content. I can't wait for the Sony VR to come into the market and see what it does and what kind of impact it creates, especially for the developer community. And also Daydream. There was lack of content, there still is, and in addition to those great releases around gaming, I'm coming from a company who's all focused mainly on productivity and creativity. I would love to see, in addition to the gaming realm, more really usable use cases that I can use on the Vive to create and to learn.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to play the contrarian role today. I think that's what I'll do.
Always needed.
So 2016 is the year of VR. Why did we call it that? We called it that because it wasn't 2015, and I would argue that it's not really working out in 2016 either. I also don't think it really matters. Like, there's so much money that has flowed into this ecosystem that if it takes an extra year to blow up, that's fine. Who cares? Like, some of the indie developers are going to starve and die, and more will emerge. But the platforms are big and real. They have budgets to last a long time. The number of developers on Earth who are making money today, who are feeding their children with their VR development, is nearly nil, and that's fine. I mean, as long as you're not that guy or woman yourself, that's, you know, the ecosystem as a whole will do just fine. If I'm a developer in the ecosystem in 2016, I'm kind of scratching my head wondering where the party went.
So I suppose like a small follow-up to that is obviously we've had some, and I'm sure I got the impression from the previous questions, but it's good to clarify. We've had some rocky launches, especially from Oculus, and Vive has a high financial burden to entry. Do you think that's just inevitable that we've had some rocky launches and the market will keep growing and growing as we go?
What does rocky launch mean?
I suppose everyone, in my opinion, everyone was basically expecting millions of units to be shifted year one, real high adoption rates. We've seen PlayStation 4, obviously it's a different sphere of gaming, but in the console space shift millions, and that hasn't been mirrored. I suppose we didn't expect a complete mirroring, but it's nowhere near those sorts of numbers. I mean, again, do you think that's to be expected?
I swear I'm not going to talk this whole time. I don't think the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox One or whatever those are, the PlayStation 4 are relevant. I think what is relevant and shows the ineptitude of the launches is the Wii. The Wii was weird. The Wii was totally new and unheard of. And the first time you handed the Wii to your uncle, or the first time you saw a Wii at a corporate party, you went home and you bought that on Amazon. And there was technical requirements. You did have to plug the sensor into your TV, and your Wiimotes did run out of batteries, and it was far from flawless. But the way that the Wii did a launch is unparalleled in sort of like software hardware history, and we didn't hit those numbers. Nor should we ever have expected to. I work at a company that is filled with very smart people, and it took us 3 hours with 2 engineers to set up the Vive. That's stupid, really. Like to get my mom or my dad to go through that process. Obviously, we're not ready for mainstream.
If you had 3 people, it would have taken 5 hours.
There's a too many cooks problem.
So a disastrous product launch is like a couple of Teslas catching on fire, right? Like nobody's been killed by a Vive yet. So like this is not a disastrous product launch. This is just natural in product development, right? So again, there were a lot of outsized expectations, but that's exactly what they were. They were outsized and they were there to build up hype.
I would say that I'm actually, as an indie game developer getting into VR, I'd actually say that I'm very excited about the way it has started without actually becoming such a mainstream market super fast, where it squeezes out the indie developers very quickly. Being in a smaller market allows us to experiment and develop stuff and have a little bit less competition from a lot of the big studios. And if it was a massive launch with millions of units right away, I think a lot of the big studios would be getting into this, and it would be a little bit harder to get into as an indie.
So, I mean, obviously, you've actually jumped into the next question I was going to ask, JJ, and I suppose one argument is that with market competition being less as it is right now, it is giving indies and anyone who enters that market far greater of a mind share of the audience. So, do you think right now it's a great time to be in virtual reality development in order to grab those eyeballs that are thirsty for content? I mean, obviously, JJ does. I just wondered what the rest of the panel thinks.
I just think that, as a developer, as someone who codes, as someone who's been working in the field, AR, VR field for the last 3.5 years, 4 years, I just see a giant reset button in front of me. You can basically reimagine every application that exists out there today. And that is exciting. That is amazing. And you see, as you said, you see a lot of indie developers who are just taking these projects on their own, and they're showing amazing stuff. You have Skillman Hackett, suddenly being acquired by Google. No one expected that. And I'm sure, more use cases like those will come soon enough.
Okay. Anyone else want to jump in, weigh in on that now?
Well, again, anytime you've got an opportunity to be the only guys in the room, you get a lot of attention. So it's a two-part problem, right? Because now you've got to make stuff good enough to live up to expectations. But that's a really good problem to have. Because, like you say, we're not in the echo chamber that mobile game development is right now, for example. So it's a huge platform. It's a great opportunity.
I'm going to throw a question back to you then. And I think you've answered this by your actions, and both of you have, which is awesome. But so if I was actually worried about paying my employees or feeding my family, and I'm not for a number of reasons, I don't need to worry about that right now, which is great. But if I was would I want to compete in the hyper-competitive, super-saturated mobile market, or the VR market where there's very few competitors and very few players?
So I would say that right now, a really good approach is to actually have some sort of a combination in terms of being able to run it as a business. There are some developers that are doing well just doing VR development, but I think for the larger majority of devs, like in our position where we've got existing games that already have a revenue stream, but also that we can possibly adapt to VR is a really good move. And it allows us to kind of get into this without as much of a burden, or without as much of a risk.
Well, okay, so I don't really agree with the choice around having to pay people versus jump into a new area. We're paying people and we're hiring right now, right? And so it's all about how you approach the early stage, regardless of who your customer is or who your future business partners are, right? Like, if you approach it from the perspective of wanting to operate it as a successful business over the long term, you can do that whether it's VR or mobile in a new company or whatever it is, right? So there's a path to success there. It's just about having the right combination of skill sets and tools to do it.
Yeah, most of the companies that we're working with are very, very small, and they currently call themselves startups, and they're raising money. And they can't allow themselves, to put the resources or, get distracted from the main goal or, the main prize in front of them. So, I'm sure, other companies as well. I mean, we have a fund going in-house. We were lucky enough to raise a big chunk of Series B now.
50, right?
Yeah. Total 75, and that gives us the opportunity to kind of invest in the ideas and the applications that we see out there today, and to imagine them together with these companies, and how would they look like in augmented reality.
Okay, that's good. So I suppose one thing that feeds into some of this is I'm hearing a lot of love for the HTC Vive, and that's common across most of the development community in gaming. However, it's not just the high-end Oculus Rift, HTC Vive. We've also got the Gear VR. And, Gear VR has been relatively quite successful, 1 million users in April. And I'm just wondering, it's been largely overlooked by the industry, and do you think the value of mobile VR is generally being overlooked, and that, there needs to be more attention paid to this area? Because right now it seems to be where a lot of high-end adoption is coming from, because the cost to entry is so low.
I think content developers make content they like, and right now everybody likes the Vive, and so everybody's making content for it. And as soon as the Gear VR turns into something that content developers like content on, there'll be a lot of content on.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of time until the Gear VR type platform will be very similar to what you get from the Vive. So those experiences will start to come across to those other platforms. But yeah, I agree also, it's what you like to make, what do you want to play yourself, and that's what you'll make.
I love the Gear VR, and I love the numbers that, Gear VR is kind of showing us out there today. And it's just a matter of time. I completely agree. I mean, you look at the hardware, you look at the software, you look at, Project Tango being deployed and Lenovo phones these days. You look at Daydream being announced and launched. You're looking at OpenGL, WebGL, A-Frame, WebVR, starting to pick up. You see partnerships with, the most important things out there, like Wikipedia and other platforms that offer these toggle buttons on Sketchfab that you can just easily see on a VR headset, like a mobile VR headset. I think it's just a matter of like a year from now until we see a lot of developers, specifically Android and mobile developers, starting to build for the VR mobile platform.
No.
I mean, I can, but it's fine.
No, okay, fair enough. So I suppose obviously we've talked about Gear, but then shifting back, obviously, in comparison, as you've said, developers are loving the Vive. There's Rift as well. These are high-end, things, devices with high levels of innovation and graphical quality and everything. But obviously, as we've discussed, they haven't quite attracted the numbers yet. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing is obviously something we've discussed. But how much better do you feel that PSVR will fare? Something that positioned within the console market, but is that mid to a high-end device rather than the Gear VR.
Can I start this one?
Yeah.
So I've tried the PSVR once, and I loved it. Like, from an ergonomics perspective, I put this thing, it felt more like a catcher baseball, like the catcher's mitt. I put this helmet on, and then I clicked the mask into place, and I could hear it click into place, and I knew everything was good. And then the game I played was awesome. Like, it was excellent. And so I was early, deep on PSVR. I was like, these guys have got it. HTC's done. Oculus is done. They got nothing. This is the future. This is amazing. They have 34 million units installed in living rooms around the world from people who are not uncomfortable spending $400 on a gaming peripheral. This is the future. And then they announced PlayStation 4.5. So it's not PlayStation 5. I mean, if you don't know, they announced a new PlayStation 4 with, as far as I understand, just better graphic processing.
Yeah. GPU. Yeah.
GPU. And that's like, and they're not even saying that's for VR. They're saying this is for modern games. Our games require a lot of polygons, a lot of processing, blah, blah, blah. And that's fine, except that you just ruined the 34 million install base, which is why you were going to win in the first place. So I assume that the PSVR will work on the standard PlayStation 4. Like, I don't think that you need the 4.5 for it. But the fact that you should go get the 4.5, to me, is them shooting themselves in the foot. And maybe they need to. Maybe like the PS4 just literally can't handle it. But I was sad inside that day because I was betting big on PSVR, and then I was like, every opportunity that you have, every reason that you are going to not just win but crush this race, got thrown out the window.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting point of view. I mean, Sony, as far as I understand it, have said that VR will work now. I mean, but I think there is a question mark over the future of the PSVR's development and whether people will need to migrate to PlayStation 4.5 or Neo in the future. I mean, yeah, do any of you think that that will affect what a lot of people have been seeing as a surefire thing for PSVR?
I haven't put a lot of thought into that, but that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's really interesting now that all three kind of full-feature headsets are converging toward very similar price points. When you put the Oculus Rift together with the touch controllers, the same experience is going to cost about the same amount. So, you know, down the road, I think that Sony's massive advantage in, like, the plug-and-play factor, like you talked before about having to take 3 hours and 2 people to set something up. Cost is one thing, but being a pain in the ass is a thing too, right? And so, you know, if it just works, people are going to want to pay for that. And the price will drop over time. Like, come Christmas, I don't think those price points are going to hold for Oculus and Vive.
I was just going to say I'm happy that there's going to be more headsets out there, more people playing.
I suppose one counter-argument, you know, that Sony will probably be weighing up in their analysis of PlayStation 4.5 is the fact that, you know, what you have with, arguably with Rift and Vive is a consumer base that, you know, arguably have to understand the mechanics of their computer in order to enter the race. You know, you have to know which drivers you need, which, you know, cards you need, all this sort of thing, whereas, you know, you have to question, in my opinion, how much thought the average PlayStation 4 consumer will put into buying that PSVR headset. You know, they may not weigh up those options and just be like, great, it works now, that'll do for me, but, you know, I don't know if anyone else agrees with that notion.
The reason I think PSVR is still amazing and super excited about it is because of local asynchronous multiplayer VR. So the description of that I've heard about is the Godzilla game. You put on the headset, you are Godzilla, you're destroying the cities, it's awesome, sounds super fun, I love this. Your friends are over, passing the headset every 5 minutes is lame, like it's sweaty, it's gross, nobody wants to do that. But if I'm Godzilla for 20 minutes or half an hour, and the three of you are flying around on the TV screen being the spaceships that are blasting Godzilla, that's really cool. That's super fun. Now we're all like playing together locally, and it's great. This is a real thing they're launching. I don't know what it's called, but like it's a real game. That's awesome. And that's not going to happen on Oculus. That's not going to happen on Vive. We're not all going to gather around my computer screen and like take turns on the keyboard or something. PlayStation are the only people who are set up to make local, asynchronous, multiplayer VR work. And as far as creating the kind of virality that we did in real life, like come over, have the best time you've had in the last 6 months, go home and buy it at Best Buy, I still think they're positioned to do well in that way.
I mean, yeah, interesting. Just it's not actually on my question list, but following on from that is, everyone's discussing the loneliness of VR and the fact that gaming has become such a social endeavor. We play multiplayer games online. You play games in mobile like Clash Royale, and it's all PvP gaming. How important do you think virtual reality discovering a way to solve, as one that Mack suggested, solving that social problem? How important do you think that is to the future of VR?
It's imperative, and it'll come soon. Like we don't push enough bits across the internet right now to make this work. But if there's one thing that we've been good at for the last 30 years, it's like making computers smaller and faster. And I have no idea how to solve social VR at scale. Altspace just did their Reggie Watts demo, and it didn't work for all intents and purposes. It crashed. That's fine. I tried to do a comedy show in VR that also didn't work. We tried to put 20 people in a room, and it bombed. But this will go away. I mean, there's much smarter people than anybody in this room who are getting paid a lot of money to solve this problem. And honestly, within 6 months, the PlayStation will launch with able to support 150 people in real time in VR would not be surprising. That these guys won't figure out something, that would not be surprising.
Multiplayer gaming is always like a second-gen problem that gets solved, right? There's always the first wave of games that everybody makes that are mainly single-player, and everybody has a really good time, and then they crack the multiplayer nut, and billions and billions of dollars roll in. So that'll happen in VR too.
Yeah, I think another thing that's going to sort of quietly do this is Minecraft. Having played a little bit of Minecraft in VR on the Vive, and having 2 hours gone by without even noticing, playing with another friend who has a Vive, which is a bit of a rare situation right now. But that already kind of solved a lot of the social problem for me. We were able to do stuff together, chat, and build things together while we were playing.
Great. I suppose one thing at the moment is we're obviously focusing on, the markets that we know. But for example, the Chinese market has rapidly different headsets and is quite a fast-growing market that's radically different. Do you think that poses an argument that all of us, whether we're developers, publishers, writers, anyone working in VR, should be looking internationally right now and should be looking internationally from day one?
Has anybody on stage tried publishing a game in China?
Nope.
It's crazy. And there are people here at this conference talking about how to do it, but the challenges of going into that market are
you need to have the right partners.
You need to have the right partners, and there's a whole other layers and layers and layers of stuff that you need to get right over there, right? That aren't the case over here. And the headset market in VR is an awesome example of the exact same challenges coming into this market now as came into the mobile market in China, which is market fragmentation to a degree that no one in outside China sees in content development, right? So, if somebody manages to get some kind of traction with some kind of device to make it worth it to, take time and energy away from making a game for outside China to take it into China, then it becomes viable.
My understanding is the good people at Archaeact who just did the consumer VR show here at this venue, and have had a lot of success. I think their Lamper sequel is like the 3rd most downloaded VR experience of all time, the #1 game or something, and they are now publishers for the Chinese market. So would I, on my own, go venture into the Chinese market? Absolutely not. I even speak Chinese. Or at least I used to speak Chinese, and I can kind of fake it now. I got a better understanding of China than most people do, and I would in no way attempt to do that on my own. But there's like 1.35 billion people over there, and they're picking this up quicker than us. So despite the obvious risk of setting sail and the big storm that exists in front of you, there's gold in them hills. If there's more people like Archaeact who can build those relationships and can take 20% from you and figure that out, it seems highly compelling to me. Not that I've done it, but it seems highly compelling.
Yeah, totally. That's an argument that works on a lot of people, and it's really, really compelling. And the question that I have about that strategy is that if I'm sitting here as a content developer right now and looking at all the places I can release content and the effort that I can put into that, China's not top of the list, regardless of the market numbers, because of all of those challenges that come along with it. And it's not that to say that it won't be there, but like there's got to be, I've got to see some like hard evidence of that being the best payoff, right? And if I see that, then I make that decision. But otherwise, I'm going to focus on where I know.
I think a lot of people are going to be out there trying to help us as developers solve some of these problems between publishers and partners in China that are making hardware, are making a lot of these headsets and arcades. They're going to be very thirsty for content. There's going to be a big demand for new content, for VR content. So I think those partners will come. The market has a way of filling in those holes. Somebody will jump in and help us transition over to those markets.
Well, okay, yeah, great. So, I mean, I suppose to change track slightly, I mean, I was at E3, for example, and the adult entertainment area was one of the busiest there for virtual reality. I know architects are using virtual reality in order to sell apartments before they even build them. I mean, there's loads of different varying applications for virtual reality. I mean, do you think that other areas of virtual reality may gain, or already are even gaining traction at a far faster rate than gaming?
I like the idea of medical simulations, kind of being thrown into a scenario which you are being fully immersed in and having to face that challenge over and over again, and to kind of do it repetitively and learn, how to do it. It's all about, kind of creating that pattern. And that is a really great use case. I mean, we see a few really good companies like BioDigital and Fusion Tech from Stanford and Simex. I mean, all these companies that are creating just that to replace, $500,000 mannequins that exist today. I mean, these are real apps that bring immediate added value to businesses, to universities, to medical facilities that are being already deployed in different mediums or different interfaces like iPads or computers, and that would be just, a huge step up in terms of learning and picking up something new.
I just literally this Saturday threw a symposium on VR journalism at the Pacific Fairmont across the street there, and it went really well, and that was really exciting. VR is amazing for any kind of high-impact, low-frequency training. So if it's the kind of thing where you pray to God that the person who's involved in this scenario has done this before, but they likely haven't because it never happens, VR is awesome. Whether that's like a nuclear reaction, whether that's rescuing somebody in a helicopter from some kind of disaster situation, whatever. Apparently there's 900 hospitals in America that are having brain surgeons using VR for training the brain surgeons right now. And I would rather my brain surgeon had surgeoned on a brain before, but if I can't get that far, I would like them to have VR surgeon the heck out of a bunch of brains. That would be super good. That being said, outside of mobile, like I just did a symposium on VR journalism, nobody's going to go buy an Oculus Rift for better journalism. They're going to use the Figment case. I finally saw a Figment case. You guys seen that? I finally saw one in real life, and it's awesome. It's like better than I was hoping. It's super good. That kind of thing. So I think that journalism is a way that a lot of people will engage with VR for the first time and will make a lot of strides for us because we all engage in journalism every day anyways. But gaming is the one place where nerds will get nerdy and will go spend like their credit card money that they don't have on the gear required to do this well. God bless them. God bless all of you. But as far as like hitting the mainstream, I honestly think journalism might go first, especially if you include 360 video and that kind of thing in this discussion.
Alongside the medical sort of fields, I think one area is going to be therapy. There's already been some examples of experimentation in this area, and it's somewhere where you're able to recreate situations in a safe environment for people, and also be able to track very detailed information about how they react to that, their movement, so for physical therapy, or their emotional responses to some of these things. So I think that is one area where it could be very beneficial and probably desperately needed too.
Right. Oh, no, go on.
Oh, no.
No?
All you.
No, so I was just going to say we're obviously, as we can see from the timer, coming to a close here. So I thought quickly at this point I just want to raise it to the floor to see if there are any final questions that you want to pose to the panel, or even myself. Yep, there's one at the back. If we could just get a mic out there. Sorry. Yeah.
Trade you, that one. Thank you. Thanks, guys. There's been a lot of controversy recently about exclusivity of content on particular VR headsets at the moment. I'm just wondering whether VR is still being seen as a peripheral more than a whole new experience platform, and what your thoughts are on that at this stage, and whether that should happen in the future, or if it's not right now, or that kind of thing.
I mean, I suppose from my experience of speaking to consumers, I'd say that consumers, for me, are still somewhat seeing it as a peripheral, but in terms of the technology, it certainly isn't. So I think, breaking down those barriers, and as you mentioned, in terms of breaking down exclusivity and things like that, will, I think, help the consumer to understand that this is a brand new platform for gaming. Just like there was confusion in the early days of mobile in terms of, is this comparable to 3DS or actually back then DS or earlier Game Boy, it's sort of creating a new branch to gaming. So you'll have mobile, you'll have portable, you'll have console, you'll have VR. And I think whilst the consumer, it doesn't quite, is still learning that right now, I think the more people that get to use it, the more people move to like, wow, this is a brand new field to the market. That was just my piece on that.
Cool.
Well, I have a hard time commenting on the whole exclusivity question without, I can't not be a content developer and answer that question, because there are a lot of assumptions built into why we make decisions to work with the people that we work with. And a lot of the reaction to it has been negative, directed toward content developers who've accepted exclusivity deals with people that they've worked with. And I totally understand the frustration around exclusivity. I don't really agree with the sort of demonizing people who want to, do what Mack was talking about and put food on your plate and a roof over your head, right? That being said, I like the moves that Valve is making to kind of break those barriers down, and I think the end result is that if somebody feels that they can make their customers happier by breaking down those barriers, then that's good for all of us. Because we don't want exclusivity to be there, but it's natural for the businesses to try to get it, and it's natural for the content developers to take the best deal they can get for the content that they're making. So, as long as there's a white knight in the form of Valve or somebody like that, then I think we're okay.
I think Oculus switched today, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
Literally today, Oculus pulled it back.
They did.
Okay, you go for it.
But I just want to say from my personal experience, so as a business, we're fully against exclusivity at the moment. We think that it's a bigger problem. It's not, us versus Magic Leap versus HoloLens versus Oculus. In my mind, it's one big community kind of trying to break these screens today. And that is the goal, as opposed to, to kind of fight each other. It's all towards kind of pushing these two new interfaces into mainstream. And to kind of go and let, developers go multi-platform, obviously.
Great. Right, well, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there for now, but I'm sure if anyone else has got any extra questions, you can find any of us and ask us after this. But yeah, so now I'd just like to say thanks to Mack, Mattan, Jedrzej, and Alan. And yeah, thank you very much for watching.